Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video. Hope everyone's well wherever you are, and I'd love to have your feedback as ever for this video or series of videos. And I know I've often talked about wishing to support people across Africa and Asia and that sort of thing, but these videos are specifically for what I think the AU, or African Union, should do in order to push Africa forward, and some of the things I stand for and I'd love for the AU to do. So hopefully I'll be able to share the link for the video in the future at some point with people across Africa, from the AU especially, and possibly with people from Africa as well. But anyway, I'll try not to waffle, as I often say, and I think this is, I know I can be very repetitive, but this is something a bit different, I hope, from other videos I've covered in a way. But anywho, I'm going to try to stop waffling, and here are some of my lists of my ideas. As ever, again, I'd love to hear your feedback, constructive criticism, positive quotes or affirmations, what you think of Africa, what you think of the AU. Do you think the AU is doing a good job? Do you think the AU could do a better job? What do you know about the AU, or any facts or figures or information, or about Africa generally, and just generally your thoughts on this video, or just generally, again, like positive affirmations will be more than welcome, as well as constructive criticism, which will hopefully help me to improve. Anyhow, here goes. So number one, as I say, I often talk about things or write things in list form, which helps me to organize my thoughts, as I do think quite a lot, being dyslexic. But I would love for the AU to look at how to unite Africa together. And I think what they should do, in my opinion, again, these are all my personal opinions, I don't want to be arrogant enough to think my opinions are facts or anything like that, but I think it'd be better for Africa itself and possibly the AU, because if all Africans can benefit, obviously the AU would, I imagine, unless it's run by people outside of Africa, but anyway, it would hopefully benefit the members of the AU as well as Africa itself. And I think on that note, actually, I think they should make sure that they definitely have people who have Africa's best interests, whether African or not, especially. And I think they should look to get as many Africans as they can, but maybe also people who are interested in Africa's development, and ensure that they're vetted to make sure that they are interested in Africa's development at the helm of or basically involved in the AU. But yeah, I think they should be they should host as many events as possible in Central Africa. The reason why I say Central Africa, I think one, it's called Central Africa, so and it's also, I imagine, in Central Africa, and it's strategically located. Maybe they could have different Central African countries hosting events each year, but I think especially Central Africa, as it's called Central Africa, and also as, again, symbolically, like the center point, which could bring all Africa together, all 54 or 55 countries in Africa. And the other thing is that it was involved, or has been involved, and probably still is, unfortunately, involved in many civil wars. So I think it would be cool to turn it into from a negative thing, from being involved in all these wars, into a positive thing, and also not just unite themselves, but even go further and unite all of Africa. Again, I'd love to hear what you think about each of these points, including that one that I raised. Number two, I think it'd be cool if African countries learned about each other's cultures, had cultural exchanges with each other, and towards. I say I'd love for Central Africa to host most of the buildings and events and summits and conferences and whatever that the AU hosts, but also people to travel to different parts of Africa so they can learn about each other and learn about each other's culture, and hopefully sort of look at what positives they can learn from each other's culture, as well as what they can improve in their own countries and things like that. Number three, I think they should promote libertarianism, liberty, freedoms, human rights, personal choices, personal accountability, and things like that. But also encourage people to help each other, but not force them, in my opinion. I suppose I'm putting forward my own personal views as a libertarian myself. Number four, it'd be great, as I say, to encourage Pan-Africanism, #Pan-Africanism, unity, basically, which I suppose is what Pan-Africanism is, and basically to come together and make peace. And that will hopefully encourage development, and in the future maybe encourage tourism to Africa, and hopefully look at ways they can capitalize on that tourism in a positive way for tackling poverty, towards tackling poverty. I think it would also be cool to have, if they have sympathy, empathy, and forgiveness for each other, and less violence, less civil wars, as few as possible, less violence, less. I hear some terrible stories like about people fighting each other and killing and torturing and burning each other, and all sorts of horrible things, like including xenophobic against each other's countries. And I think it'd be good if they unite. In fact, I think things like Brexit and how Europe is more divided probably than ever, I think is a good opportunity for Africa and African countries to come together and capitalize on that to make sure they do as well as possible. Number 5, I think it'd be great if they worked towards shared goals. Again, all 54 or 55 countries looked at what they do have in common rather than what they have different from each other, what their differences are. I think it'd be better if they look at what they have in common, and also working towards shared goals and things like supporting each other to get as much access to electricity, the internet, technology generally, STEM training, teaching, and things like that, especially in STEM and even politics and business and things like that, as much as possible. And again, the African Union could have events in Central Africa itself which look at how to bring Africa together politically and business-wise, like supporting each other's businesses, supporting each other's ideas, helping to provide access to electricity to as many people as possible across Africa, access to, I would say, technology, the internet especially, electricity generally, and things like that. So empower Africa in so many ways, which hopefully will have many positive knock-on effects. And if they support each other, like so when one African country struggles, they all support each other. If they go through a natural disaster, heaven forbid, they can have each other's backs and things like that. I think there's many quotes from many different sources, including the Bible itself, which talks about unity. So, but I think also respecting each other's religions and differences. Number 6, I know I have to mention this, but as a fan of Italian football, I know that Italian football can be a bit racist, but as I've been talking about recently, I'd love to improve relations between Italians and black people, including from Africa, and where maybe Italian football could fundraise for Africa, including in technology and things like that. So, and maybe they could have some sort of deal where Italians help Africa in areas like business and technology and things like that, and Africans help black people in terms of practicing football again to help Italian football to become number 1 again, hopefully, or great again at least. Close to number 1 as possible, preferably number 1. Number 7, I also hope for similar for Celtic. Like Celtic does a lot of charity work in Africa anyway, and hope to promote Italian football, Serie A, and Italian football generally in Africa, and improve relations. Again, I think there's an incentive for Italians to be less racist if they know that it could help Italian football to become more popular. Perhaps maybe I'm being naive again, but also with Celtic, I'd love to promote, as I say, I'd love to promote Serie A, even Serie B perhaps, but especially Serie A, which is the top Italian league, and Celtic, Italian football generally, and things like that, and improve relations through football, as I say. And also, but maybe even the MLS, Major League Soccer in America, of course, or even other leagues could do fundraising, and like sports teams generally, and also musical companies can send like musical equipment and stuff like that, charities and NGOs as well. I think religious organizations, mosques, churches, gurdwaras, mundas, how we pronounce it, and so on and so forth, synagogues even, should do what they can to support Africa, I think, in my opinion. And it would be great to see a lot of that sympathy and empathy and charitable work to help to tackle poverty and problems facing Africa as much as possible. Number 8, I think people of colour should support Africa as a way to tackle white supremacy. And again, the AU could be a source for, like, it could have its own, if it doesn't already do so, it could have its own website where they talk about how people can fund, and I often talk about like being a one-stop place or shop, so to speak, where basically it's one place where you can go to. So if there's so many different causes in Africa, I think it'd be cool if there's just one place where you can go to, one website where you look at, and maybe you could have a list of different causes and people could choose which ones they want to support, whoever wants to support projects in Africa which help things like education, training and things like that, or even businesses and African businesses they can support and things like that. I know you can go onto Google and find so many, and you can go on YouTube, but I think it'd be cool if there's one place. It makes it much more simplified, which is quite ironic since they have so many ideas. But yeah, I often talk about one place, like with dyslexics and things like that coming together. As a side note, number 9, I'd love to promote African poetry, art, writing, creative works, engineering projects, and all sorts of different projects, as well as businesses are saying things like that. And I think it would be great if the AU did that, including on this so-called website that I talked about. And number 10, I think it'd be great to support young people. And when countries like Brazil, possibly Brazil, but especially Russia, India, China, the UK, the US, and other such countries want to go, Japan, for instance, want to go into Africa, I think it'd be cool if they said in return for access to our resources, our minerals and other resources and things like that, you would have to they could get those countries to outbid each other to say what they are going to do to benefit Africa. And I think especially helping people, in particular young people, but all people of all ages, in STEM and technology, especially science, tech, engineering, maths, and especially technology, and also entrepreneurship. And even though I'm an anti-imperialist, I also wish to encourage, because I changed the acronym STEM to it's normally S.T.E.M, but I change it to S.T.E.M. So I add entrepreneurship or entrepreneurialism, big word for me, and also English or communications, because I think it's important to be able to speak one language so you can communicate with each other and trade with each other as well as the rest of the world. So they can promote African goods around the world as well and their businesses. And also, as empowering young people, but people of all ages really. And animal rights is another thing I hope the AU will encourage. I would love to encourage them to support animal rights across Africa, encourage more animal rights, as I say, across Africa. And also, I'll say, lost my train of thought, sorry. Yeah, when these countries come in, as I say, to talk about which one will invest the most into helping people in science, tech, engineering, entrepreneurship, English or communications, education, basically training, and maths and that sort of thing. And lost my train of thought again, sorry. But yeah, I think it'd be cool. That's what I was going to say. Sorry, if Africans also helped each other, so people who are good at tech passed on what they know and don't just keep it to themselves, but pass it on to each other, and they don't hoard ideas. So this is a bit hypocritical of me to say, perhaps, but they don't hoard ideas just for themselves. In the past, I was guilty of perhaps keeping my ideas to myself, thinking I'm the only person who comes up with good ideas or whatever. Arguably, some people might say I don't even do that, but I say it's the only thing I'm good at, perhaps. But it would be cool if they passed on, and in tech, but also just generally, like, pass on their skills and knowledge to each other, and that sort of thing. So I'd love to hear what you think. As ever, I hope you won't be too harsh, and I am out. Peace and love.